The stars had never seemed so threatening before. Captain Daquan stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense frigate Indomitable, watching the sensor displays with growing dread. 300 ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system just 6 hours ago. 300 massive warships, each one 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. They called themselves the Valon Dominion. Day's hands gripped the railing as he studied the alien fleet. His ship was one of Earth's newest vessels, equipped with the best weapons and shields humanity could create. But looking at those readings, he knew the truth. His ship was a toy compared to what was out there. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the flagship," Lieutenant Tehan said from his station. The young officer's voice was steady, but Day could see the fear in his eyes. "Put it through," Day commanded. The main screen flickered to life. A tall, thin creature appeared. Its skin was pale blue, and its eyes were large and dark. This was Commander Velthris, leader of the Valon fleet. The alien had spoken to Earth's leaders twice already, and each time, his message was the same. "People of Earth," Velthris said, his voice translated by the ship's computer. "You have 48 hours remaining to accept our terms. Surrender peacefully, and you will be welcomed into the Dominion. Your planet will be protected. Your people will prosper under our guidance." Day had heard this speech before. It sounded reasonable, almost kind, but everyone knew what it really meant. Earth would become property of the Valon. Humans would serve alien masters. Freedom would be gone forever. "Refuse," Velthris continued, "and we will take your world by force. We do not wish this. We have conquered 4,000 civilizations across the galaxy. Not one has been foolish enough to resist. Do not be the first." The transmission ended. Day stood in silence for a moment, then turned to his crew. "Get me Admiral Park," he said quietly. Across the solar system, on the Earth Defense Command Station orbiting Mars, Admiral Sung Park sat in an emergency meeting with Earth's top leaders. Scientists, generals, and politicians filled the room. Everyone looked exhausted. They had been working without sleep since the Valon arrived. Dr. Hannah Rim, Earth's chief xenolinguist, stood at the front of the room presenting her findings. She was young for such an important position, only 32. But she was the best at what she did. "I've analyzed every transmission from the Valon," Hannah explained, pointing to data on the screen. "Their language is complex, but their actual communications are very simple. Everything follows patterns. Their tactical orders, their fleet movements, even their diplomatic messages. They're like a machine, very efficient, but also very predictable." "That doesn't help us fight them," said General Kim, head of Earth's ground forces. "We ran simulations. Even if we used every weapon we have, we couldn't destroy a single one of their ships. Their shields are too strong." Hannah nodded. "I know, but I think there might be something else we can use. They've never faced real resistance before. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered immediately or been crushed in a few hours. They don't know how to fight a long war." Admiral Park leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we actually fight them?" "I'm suggesting we make them think twice," Hannah replied. "We can't beat them in direct combat, but maybe we can make winning so annoying, so expensive, that they decide we're not worth the trouble." The room erupted in argument. Some called the idea crazy. Others called it suicide. But Admiral Park raised his hand for silence. "Let's hear more," he said. Back on the Indomitable, engineer Gina Choi was working in the ship's laboratory. Pieces of equipment were scattered across her workstation. She was young, barely 25, but she had graduated top of her class from the Mars Technical Institute. Right now, she was building something that might save Earth or might get her court-martialed. She wasn't sure which. "Captain Kwanda Engineering," came a voice over the intercom. Gina tapped her communicator. "Choi here." "How's your project coming?" Day asked. Gina looked at the small devices she had been assembling. They looked like simple sensor buoys, the kind used for navigation. But inside, they were something else entirely. "Almost done, sir," she said. "But I need to explain something. These won't destroy their ships. They won't even damage them. Then what will they do? They'll confuse them. Confuse their sensors, their targeting systems, their navigation. Make them see things that aren't there. It's not much, but it might buy us some time." There was a pause. Then Day spoke again. Time is exactly what we need. Keep working. Gina smiled and returned to her task. 24 hours before the deadline, the Valon decided to send a message. Not with words this time, but with power. An unmanned defense satellite orbited Earth, monitoring space traffic. Without warning, a beam of purple light shot from one of the Valon ships. The beam didn't explode or burn. It simply bent space around the satellite. For a moment, the satellite seemed to fold in on itself, like paper being crumpled. Then it was gone. Not destroyed, just erased from existence. Every sensor on Earth recorded the event. Scientists analyzed it immediately. The results were worse than anyone feared. The Valon could bend space itself as a weapon. No human shield could stop that. No armor could protect against it. Admiral Park called another emergency meeting. This time, the mood was different. The politicians who had argued for resistance now spoke of surrender. The generals who had planned battle strategies now talked of saving lives through submission. Only Captain Day Kwan spoke differently. "Request permission to address the council," he said. Park nodded. "Granted." Day stood and faced the room. "I know what everyone is thinking. We can't win. They're too powerful. Surrender is logical. It saves lives." He paused, looking at each person in the room. "But I've studied Earth's history. Humans have faced impossible odds before. We've fought enemies we couldn't defeat through strength alone. Sometimes we lost, but sometimes we won. Not because we were stronger. Because we were stubborn. Because we refused to quit." "This isn't ancient history, Captain," someone said. "These are weapons that erase matter from existence." "I know," Day replied. "And I know we can't beat them in a fair fight. So we don't fight fair. We fight smart. We fight dirty if we have to. We make them regret coming to our system." Admiral Park studied the young captain. "You have a plan?" "The beginning of one, sir. Engineer Choi has been developing something. It's risky. It might not work. But I'd rather die trying than live on my knees." The room fell silent. Then Dr. Hana Rim stood up. "I'm with Captain Kwan," she said. "I didn't spend my whole life studying alien cultures just to become one of their subjects." One by one, others stood. Not everyone, but enough. Admiral Park looked at them all and made his decision. "Captain Kwan, you have 24 hours. Use them well." As the meeting ended and people filed out, Day stood by the window, looking at Earth below. It was a beautiful planet. Blue and green and white, spinning peacefully in space. He thought about everyone down there. Billions of people going about their lives, not knowing that their freedom hung by a thread. He pulled out his communicator. "Kwan to Indomitable. Prepare the ship. We launch in 6 hours." "Sir?" Tay's voice came back. "Launch for where?" Day smiled grimly. "Right into the middle of their fleet. Time to show these Valen what humans are made of." The Indomitable moved through space on what everyone knew was a one-way trip. Captain Day Kwan sat in his command chair, watching the Valen fleet grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, his crew worked in silence. They all knew the plan. They all knew the odds. None of them had to be here. Every single person on this ship had volunteered. "Distance to the fleet?" Day asked. 200,000 kilometers and closing, Lieutenant Tae Han reported. "They're scanning us, but they haven't powered weapons yet." "Good. Keep broadcasting the surrender signal. We need them to think we're harmless." In the engineering section, Gina Choi made final adjustments to her devices. She had built 40 of them, each one packed into a small drone. They didn't look dangerous. That was the point. "Choi to bridge. The chaff drones are ready," she said into her communicator. "Understood," Day replied. "Stand by." Gina sat back and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking. She was an engineer, not a soldier. A week ago, her biggest worry was improving engine efficiency. Now she was part of a plan that would either save Earth or accomplish nothing at all. The communicator chirped again. "Gina, this is the captain. Whatever happens, you should know that your work might save millions of lives. Be proud of that." "Thank you, sir," Gina managed to say. Aboard the Valon flagship, Commander Velthris watched the approaching human ship with mild interest. It was transmitting a surrender code, requesting permission to deliver Earth's formal response in person. How predictable. Most species did this. They wanted to surrender with dignity, to feel like they had some control over their fate. Let them approach, Velthris ordered, but keep weapons locked on them. These humans have shown unusual stubbornness. I don't trust them. His second officer nodded. The ship is small and lightly armed. Even if they tried something foolish, they couldn't harm us. Velthris agreed. Still, something bothered him about these humans. Their transmissions over the past 2 days had been strange. They kept asking questions. How many species had the Valon conquered? How long had the Dominion existed? What happened to species that resisted? It was as if they were studying him, trying to understand his psychology. Velthris found it amusing. What could they learn that would help them? The Valon were superior in every way. That was simply a fact. Sir, the human ship is within weapons range, his tactical officer reported. Acknowledged. Continue monitoring. On the Indomitable, Day watched the distance counter drop. 100 kilometers. 50, 25. They were so close now that he could see individual Valon ships through the viewport. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Sleek and dark, covered in energy shields that shimmered like water. Now, Gina, Day said quietly. In engineering, Gina pressed a button. 40 drone hatches on the Indomitable's hull opened simultaneously. The chaff drones shot out in all directions, spreading through the Valon fleet like seeds on the wind. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the Valon sensors went crazy. Each drone began broadcasting false signals, mimicking the energy signature of a Valon ship. Suddenly, the Valon fleet's sensors showed hundreds of new contacts appearing from nowhere. Friend or foe systems couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. Automated defense turrets began tracking targets, trying to decide what to shoot. "What is this?" Velthris shouted, standing up from his chair. His screens showed chaos, ships everywhere, or what looked like ships, but half of them couldn't be real. His weapons systems were demanding target priorities, but he didn't know what to tell them. "Some kind of electronic warfare, sir," his tactical officer said, fingers flying over controls. "They're flooding our sensors with false data. Then filter it out." "We're trying, but the signals are perfectly matched to our own ships. The computer can't tell the difference." One of the automated defense platforms, unable to distinguish between real and fake targets, locked onto what it thought was an enemy vessel. It fired. The blast struck a Valon cruiser's shields, causing no real damage, but triggering that ship's own automated defenses. Within seconds, Valon ships were firing at ghosts and occasionally hitting each other. On the Indomitable, Taihan watched his screen with amazement. "It's working. They're shooting at their own ships." "Not for long," Day said. "They'll figure it out soon. Helm, take us toward that cruiser, full speed." "Sir?" The helmsman turned, confused. "You heard me. Rammer." The crew stared at their captain. Ramming an enemy ship was a tactic from ancient history, from the days of wooden boats and cannons. No one did that in space combat. It was suicide. "Captain," Tay began. "We're not trying to destroy her," Day explained quickly. "We're going to attach something to her hull. Gina, are the beacons ready?" "Yes, sir," Gina's voice came through the intercom. "But if we hit them at full speed, we won't be aboard when we hit. Everyone to the escape pods. That's an order." The crew hesitated for only a moment. Then training took over. They moved quickly and efficiently, heading for the escape pods. Day stayed on the bridge with Tai, programming the final course into the navigation computer. "The ship will stay on target," Day said, entering the last commands. "The beacons will attach on impact. After that, our job is done." Tay nodded. "It's been an honor, sir." "Not over yet, Lieutenant. Let's get to the pods." They ran through the corridors of the Indomitable, the ship shaking around them as it accelerated to ramming speed. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Behind them, they could hear the engines straining at maximum power. Day and Tay reached the last escape pod and climbed inside. Through the small window, Day could see the Valen cruiser growing larger and larger. It filled the entire view, a wall of dark metal and shimmering energy. "Launch the pod," Day ordered. The pod shot away from the Indomitable just as the frigate struck the Valan cruiser. The impact was silent in the vacuum of space, but the flash of light was visible across the solar system. The Indomitable crumpled like paper, her hull tearing open. But in that moment of destruction, dozens of small devices attached themselves to the Valan ship's hull. Beacons, each one broadcasting constantly shifting false data directly into the cruiser's systems. The cruiser's sensors went completely blind. Worse, because the Valan fleet was networked together, the confusion spread like a virus. Ship after ship reported sensor malfunctions. The entire fleet had to shut down their automated systems and switch to manual control. In the escape pod, Day and Tay watched their ship die. They felt the explosion more than saw it. A gentle push against the pod, like a hand shoving them away. "She was a good ship," Tay said quietly. Day nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then his training reasserted itself. "Status? Pod is intact. Life support is good. We're drifting, but the Valan will pick us up soon." "I know. That's part of the plan too." Tay looked at his captain in surprise. "It is?" "Dr. Rim thinks we can learn more about the Valan by being their prisoners than we ever could from out here. And they might learn something about us too. Something that makes them think twice about conquering Earth." Sure enough, a Valan shuttle appeared within minutes. It collected the escape pods one by one, tractoring them into its cargo bay. Day and his crew were taken aboard the flagship, placed in a detention area that was clean and comfortable. Not a dungeon, more like a hotel room with locked doors. An hour later, Commander Velthris came to see Day personally. The Valan commander stood in the doorway, studying the human captain. Day stood at attention, meeting the alien's gaze without fear. "I am trying to understand," Velthris said finally. "You sacrificed your ship. You sacrificed your freedom. For what? A delay of a few hours? This is illogical." Day smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "You wouldn't understand," Day said. "Your empire is built on being stronger than everyone else. You've never had to fight when you knew you couldn't win. But humans? We've been doing that for thousands of years. Then you are fools. Maybe, but we're stubborn fools. We don't fight to win, Commander. We fight because we're too stubborn to quit. And that makes all the difference." Velthris stared at the human for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. But as he walked back to his command center, he found himself troubled. The attack on his fleet had been primitive, almost childish in its simplicity. But it had worked. His ships were still sorting out their sensor networks. The entire fleet's advance had been delayed by over 30 hours. For a species that could bend space itself, being delayed by simple electronic tricks was embarrassing. More than that, it was unprecedented. Velthris sat in his command chair and opened a channel to the Valan High Council. It was time to report what had happened. They would not be pleased. The Dominion prided itself on efficiency, quick conquests, minimal losses. This conquest was becoming anything but quick. Back in the detention area, Day sat with his crew. They were alive. Their ship was gone, but they were alive, and Earth had gained precious time. "Now what, sir?" Tay asked. Day leaned back against the wall. "Now we wait, and we watch, and we learn everything we can about these Valan, because the war isn't over. It's just beginning." Admiral Sung Park stood in the command center on Mars, staring at the tactical display. The Valan fleet was still there, hanging in space like a sword above Earth's head. But they had stopped advancing. Captain Kwan's sacrifice had bought time, and Park intended to use every second of it. "Status report," he ordered. A junior officer stepped forward. "The Valan are still clearing the false signals from their network. Our intelligence suggests they'll resume their advance in approximately 30 hours. 30 hours. Not much, but it would have to be enough." Dr. Hannah Rim entered the command center, carrying a tablet filled with data. She looked exhausted. Like everyone else, She hadn't slept since the Valon arrived, but her eyes were bright with discovery. "Admiral, I need to show you something," she said. Park gestured for her to continue. Hana pulled up a series of files on the main screen. "I've been analyzing everything we know about the Valan Dominion, their history, their conquests, their culture. And I found something interesting. They've existed for over 5,000 years. In that time, they've absorbed 4,000 civilizations." "We already knew that," Park said. "Yes, but look at the pattern. Every conquest follows the same formula. They arrive, demonstrate overwhelming force, demand surrender, and the species submits. The longest any species has resisted is 72 hours. After that, they're either destroyed or they give up." Park frowned. "What's your point?" "My point is that the Valon have become predictable. They've done this so many times that it's become routine for them. They don't adapt because they've never needed to. They're like a machine that only knows one program." "A very effective program," Park noted. "Against species that fight conventionally, yes. But what if we don't fight conventionally? What if we treat this like humans have treated superior enemies throughout our history? Guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, making them fight on our terms, not theirs." Park considered this. "You're suggesting we can't beat them militarily, but we might make them give up?" "Exactly. Not because we're stronger, but because we make conquest too expensive, too annoying, too unpredictable. The Valon run an empire. Empires are built on efficiency. If we can make Earth inefficient to conquer, maybe they'll decide we're not worth it." The Admiral looked at the young doctor with new respect. "What do you need?" Hana smiled. "I need to get on every broadcast channel we have, and I need engineer Unico's team to start building as many fake mines as possible." Across the solar system, on Earth's lunar base, engineer Unico was already working. She was older than Gina Choi, with 15 years of experience in defense systems. When Admiral Park's orders came through, she had immediately understood what was needed. Her team was building mines, thousands of them. But these weren't real mines, at least not most of them. They were cheap drones designed to look like mines on Valon sensors. They would float in Earth's orbit, creating a minefield that would take the Valan days to clear. "How many can we deploy in 30 hours?" Yuna asked her assistant. "If we work non-stop, maybe 5,000 fake ones and 50 real ones. Make it 10,000 fake ones. I want space around Earth so cluttered with these things that the Valon can't move without hitting one. And make sure the real ones are spread randomly throughout. They need to be paranoid about every single contact." While Yuna worked, Dr. Hana Rim began her broadcast campaign. She recorded a message not to Earth, but to the Valon fleet. Then she had it transmitted on every frequency humans could access. "Commander Velthris," her message began, "I am Dr. Hana Rim, xenolinguist for the United Earth Navy. I want to talk to you about war." On the Valon flagship, Velthris listened to the transmission with curiosity. The human doctor appeared on his screen, speaking calmly and clearly. "Your dominion has existed for 5,000 years, Hana continued. "In that time, you've conquered 4,000 civilizations. But I wonder, Commander, how many of your officers have actually fought in a war? Not a conquest, a real war, against an enemy that fights back, that adapts, that refuses to surrender." Velthris frowned. Where was this going? Humanity has existed for much less time than the Valon Dominion. But in our short history, we fought hundreds of wars. Not against aliens, but against each other. We know every trick, every strategy, every desperate tactic. We know how to fight enemies stronger than us because we've had to do it over and over again. Hana paused, then continued. "I'm sending you some files, Commander. Historical records, the Vietnam War, the Afghan resistance, the Finnish Winter War. Study them. See what happens when a technologically superior force fights an enemy that refuses to quit, an enemy that knows the terrain. That fight's dirty. That makes every meter of ground cost blood and time." The transmission ended. Attached to it were thousands of files, video recordings, tactical analyses, historical documents, all showing humans fighting against superior enemies and either winning or making victory so costly that the enemy gave up. Velthris watched some of the footage. He saw primitive humans using simple weapons to defeat armies with tanks and aircraft. He saw guerrilla fighters blending into civilian populations, striking and vanishing. He saw defenders turning entire cities into mazes of death traps. It was disturbing. The Valan fought clean wars, ship against ship, technology against technology. These humans fought like animals, using deception and ambush and terror. "Sir, we're detecting something around Earth," his tactical officer reported, pulling Velthris from his thoughts. "What is it?" "Mines. Thousands of them. They appeared while we were dealing with the sensor issues. They've created a defensive perimeter around the planet." Velthris stood up, angry now. "How did we miss this?" "We were focused on clearing our systems, sir. And the mines are small. Easy to overlook until there are so many of them." "Can we clear them?" "Yes, but it will take time. We'll need to scan each one to determine if it's armed or a decoy. At current rates, clearing a safe path to Earth will take approximately 48 hours. 48 hours. Another delay. Velthris felt frustration building. This was supposed to be simple. Show up, demonstrate power, accept surrender. That's how it always worked. But these humans kept changing the rules. In the detention area of the Valan flagship, Captain Day Quan sat with Dr. Hana Rim, who had been captured along with several other specialists when their shuttle was intercepted. They spoke quietly, aware that the Valan were probably listening. "How long can we keep this up?" Day asked. "Long enough, I hope," Hana replied. Every delay cost them resources, time, and patience. The Valan High Council is probably getting reports about how this simple conquest is taking longer than planned. And if they decide to just destroy Earth from orbit instead of conquering it? Hana looked troubled. "That's the risk. We're betting that the Dominion wants to add us to their empire, not annihilate us. If we're wrong, billions of people die." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Hana spoke again. "I've been talking to some of the Valan guards. Did you know most of them aren't soldiers? They're administrators, scientists, logistics officers. The Dominion hasn't fought a real war in centuries. They've forgotten how. And we remember because we never stopped fighting each other," Day said grimly. "Exactly. It's terrible to say, but our history of warfare might be the thing that saves us." A Valan guard approached their cell. "The human doctor. Commander Velthris wants to speak with you." Hana stood up, smoothing her uniform. "Wish me luck." "Don't need luck," Day said. "You've got something better. You've got the truth." Hana was escorted to Velthris's private office. The Valan commander sat behind a desk, studying a holographic display showing Earth's defensive minefield. "Dr. Rim," he said without looking up, "you sent me historical records of human conflicts." "I did." "I have watched them. They are brutal, inefficient, wasteful of life and resources." "They're also effective," Hana replied. "Superior technology doesn't guarantee victory. Ask the French in Vietnam. Ask the Soviets in Afghanistan. Ask any empire in history that tried to conquer people who refused to be conquered." Velthris finally looked at her. "You believe you can defeat the Valan Dominion with primitive tactics?" "No," Hana said honestly. "I believe we can make defeating us so expensive that you'll decide we're not worth the cost. You run an empire, Commander. Empires are built on economics. Cost versus benefit. Right now, Earth is costing you more than you expected. A temporary inconvenience? Is it? You've been delayed twice now. Your fleet is spending time clearing mines instead of conquering. Your High Council is probably asking questions. How many more delays before they start wondering if this conquest is efficient? How many more tricks do you think we have prepared?" Velthris stood up, towering over the small human. "You are playing a dangerous game, Doctor. We could destroy your planet from orbit, turn it into radioactive ash. We don't need to conquer you." "But you want to," Hana said quietly. "Because that's what the Dominion does. You collect civilizations like specimens. Destroying us would be admitting failure. Admitting that for the first time in 5,000 years, you found a species you couldn't easily conquer." The Valan commander was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice cold. "Return to your cell. This conversation is over." As guards escorted Hana away, Velthris sat back down. He opened a communication channel to the Valon High Council. It was time to request guidance. This conquest was not proceeding as planned. The High Council's response came 6 hours later. Velthris read it 3 times. Unable to believe what he was seeing, they were ordering him to accelerate the conquest. No more patience, no more delays. He was to select one human city and destroy it from orbit as a demonstration. Show Earth that resistance was futile. Force them to surrender through fear. The target they chose was Sol. 12 million humans lived there. In 24 hours, unless Earth surrendered, those 12 million would die. Velthris gave the order to prepare the orbital bombardment. Then he sat alone in his office, feeling something he hadn't felt in centuries. Doubt. The news reached Earth within minutes. The Valon were going to destroy Sol in 24 hours unless humanity surrendered immediately. Admiral Sung Park stood before the emergency council, facing the hardest decision of his life. Around the table sat Earth's leaders, and every face showed the same terrible understanding. They had run out of tricks, out of time, out of options. "We have to surrender," the president said quietly. "We can't let 12 million people die." "If we surrender now, we all become slaves," General Kim argued. "Every human on Earth." "Better slaves than dead," someone else said. Park listened to them argue, feeling the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. He had gambled that the Valon could be frustrated into leaving. But he had been wrong. Now, innocent people would pay the price. "There might be another way," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Dr. Hannah Rim stood there, flanked by guards. She had just been brought back from the Valon flagship in a prisoner exchange. "Dr. Rim," Park said, "you're supposed to be in medical." "I'm fine, Admiral. And I have information." Hannah walked to the table, moving stiffly. "I've been studying the Valon for 3 days now, living with them, talking to them, watching them. And I found something important." She pulled up data on the central screen. The Valon fleet isn't full of warriors. Most of them are bureaucrats, scientists, administrators. They've been assigned to this conquest because the Dominion thought it would be easy, a routine mission, but they're not prepared for actual combat. More importantly, many of them don't want to be here. "Explain," Park said. "I made contact with one of their communications officers. His name is Kelthir. He's been with the Dominion for 70 years, managing data networks. He's never killed anyone, never even seen combat. And the order to destroy Sol bothers him deeply. It bothers a lot of them. Bothered or not, they'll follow orders," General Kim said. "Maybe. But what if we give them a reason not to? What if we offer them something?" Park leaned forward. "What could we possibly offer that they don't already have?" Hannah smiled. "Knowledge, culture, history. The Valon collect civilizations, Admiral. They catalog them, study them, preserve them. What if we offered to give them our entire cultural archive? Every book, every song, every piece of art and science humanity has ever created, freely given before they destroy it." "That's it?" someone asked incredulously. "That's your plan? Bribe them with books?" "Not a bribe. An appeal to their nature. The Valon are collectors, not destroyers. Kelthir told me that in 5,000 years, they've only destroyed 3 species completely. It's considered a failure when that happens, a waste of potential knowledge." Park considered this. "Even if it works, even if this Kelthir delays the attack, we still can't fight the Valon fleet." "We don't have to fight them," Hannah said. "We just need to survive long enough for them to give up, and I have an idea for that too." Aboard the Valon flagship, Kelthir sat at his station, processing data streams. He had been doing this job for 70 years, and it had always been satisfying. He helped catalog new species, preserved their knowledge, ensured that nothing was lost when the Dominion expanded. But this was different. The order to destroy Sol had come directly from the High Council. 12 million lives erased to prove a point. It made him sick. A message appeared on his private screen from Dr. Rim. Kelthir glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then opened it. "Kelthir, I know you don't want this. I know destroying Sol goes against everything the Dominion is supposed to stand for. I'm offering you something. Delay the bombardment for 6 hours. Just 6 hours. In exchange, I'll transmit humanity's complete cultural archive to your personal database. Every book we've written, every song, every scientific discovery. You can give it to the Dominion. Show them what they would have destroyed. Maybe it won't change anything, but maybe it will. Kelther sat frozen, staring at the message. What Dr. Rim was asking was, technically, treason. Delaying a High Council order, even by hours, could get him demoted or worse. But she was also offering him a chance to preserve an entire civilization's knowledge. That was his purpose. His calling. The reason he had joined the Dominion in the first place. He made his decision. Kelther sent a response. Send the archive. I'll find a reason to delay the firing sequence for 6 hours, but that's all I can do. On Earth, engineer Gina Choi watched the transmission upload. Terabytes of data flowing to the Valen flagship. Every piece of human culture compressed and packaged. It would take hours to transfer completely. While that happened, she worked on another project. Engineer Yuna Ko's team had built the fake minefield. Now Gina was building something else. Something desperate. The Swarm Protocol. All across Earth, civilian ships were being retrofitted with weapons. Not good weapons. Anything they could find. Mining lasers, construction equipment, even modified communications arrays that could serve as crude particle beams. Each ship was weak, barely armed, worth nothing in a real fight. But there were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, once the call went out. Admiral Park wants to know if the swarm is ready, a technician said. Gina looked at the ragged fleet assembling in lunar orbit. Cargo haulers, private yachts, mining vessels, transport ships. Each one crewed by volunteers who knew they probably wouldn't come back. Tell the Admiral it's as ready as it's ever going to be, Gina said. On the Valan flagship, Commander Velthris reviewed the bombardment plan. The weapons were charged. The targeting solutions were calculated. In 6 hours, Sol would cease to exist, and Earth would surrender. The conquest would be complete. His communicator chimed. Sir, there's an issue with the firing sequence. Velthris frowned. What kind of issue? A data corruption in the targeting computers. Officer Kelther is running diagnostics. He says it will take approximately 6 hours to resolve. 6 hours? That's unacceptable. Override it. We can't, sir. If we fire with corrupted targeting data, we might miss the target entirely. Kelther recommends we wait for the full diagnostic cycle. Velthris slammed his hand on the console. Another delay. Another problem? Nothing about this conquest had gone smoothly, but he couldn't risk firing the bombardment and missing. That would make the Dominion look incompetent. Fine, 6 hours, but not a minute more. In the detention area, Captain Daquan received a coded message from Admiral Park. The attack was delayed. They had 6 hours. The swarm was launching. What do we do, sir? Lieutenant Tehan asked. Day thought for a moment. We create a distraction. If the Valan are dealing with external threats, they might not notice what's happening with their targeting computers until it's too late. How do we create a distraction from inside a cell? Day smiled. We don't. We do it from inside their ship. What happened next would be talked about for years. Captain Daquan and his crew, prisoners aboard an alien flagship, somehow managed to coordinate a breakout. They used improvised tools, stolen access cards, and pure audacity. They didn't try to escape the ship. Instead, they took over the shuttle bay, sealing themselves inside with Valan security forces trapped on the other side. This is Captain Daquan, Day broadcast on all channels. We have control of Shuttle Bay 3. We're armed with Valen weapons and we're not afraid to use them. It was a bluff. They had weapons, but they were outnumbered 50-1. The Valen could retake the bay anytime they wanted. But it would take time, effort, and attention. Time and attention that wouldn't be focused on the targeting computers. While the Valan dealt with the prisoner revolt, Kelther worked frantically in the computer systems. Dr. Rim's archive had finished uploading. Now he had to actually delay the bombardment in a way that looked accidental. He introduced tiny errors into the firing solution. Minute variations in trajectory that would cause the weapons to miss Sol completely. The errors were small enough that they wouldn't be caught in a normal check, but large enough to matter. Meanwhile, Earth's swarm launched. Hundreds of civilian ships moving in chaotic, unpredictable patterns. They didn't form neat battle lines like military vessels. They swarmed like insects, impossible to track efficiently. The Valon fleet's sensors, still recovering from earlier disruptions, struggled to categorize all the contacts. Warships, civilian vessels, more decoys. The point defense systems designed for orderly battles against conventional enemies couldn't decide what to prioritize. Several swarm vessels broke through the Valon perimeter. They targeted a cruiser's sensor arrays, concentrating their weak weapons on a single point. The damage was minor, but the cruiser was temporarily blinded. On the flagship, Velthris watched the chaos unfold with growing fury. The prisoner revolt, the swarm attack, the targeting computer issues. Everything was falling apart. "Sir, the 6 hours are up," his tactical officer reported. "Targeting systems are back online." "Fire immediately," Velthris ordered. The bombardment launched. Massive energy weapons capable of cracking continents fired at Earth's surface. The beams crossed space in seconds and missed Sol by 50 kilometers. The devastation was total, but it struck an evacuated industrial zone. Buildings vaporized, ground turned to glass. But the death toll was 0. The city itself was untouched. "What happened?" Velthris demanded. "I don't know, sir. The targeting solution was off. We need to recalibrate and fire again." "No." Velthris sat down heavily. "No more." He opened a channel to the Valon High Council. It was time to admit the truth. This conquest was failing. Not because the humans were stronger, but because they were more trouble than they were worth. The High Council's response came quickly. One word: withdraw. The word spread through the Valon fleet like electricity. Withdraw. After 5 days of increasing frustration, delays, and unexpected resistance, the Dominion High Council had made a decision that shocked everyone. They were leaving. Not because they had been defeated in battle, but because the cost of conquest had become unacceptable. Commander Velthris stood on his bridge, reading the official order for the 3rd time. The language was carefully diplomatic, but the meaning was clear. The Dominion had analyzed the situation and determined that Earth would require permanent occupation forces, constant suppression, and endless resources to maintain control. The humans had proven too unpredictable, too creative, too stubborn. For the first time in the Dominion's 5,000-year history, they were walking away from a conquest not because they couldn't win, but because winning wasn't worth it. "Prepare a communication to Earth's leadership," Velthris said finally. "Tell them we wish to negotiate terms." Admiral Sung Park received the message while standing in Earth Defense Command, surrounded by exhausted staff who had worked without sleep for days. At first, no one believed it. They read the message again and again, waiting for the trap, the trick, the final cruel joke. "They're serious," Dr. Hana Rim said, reviewing the transmission codes. "This is an official Dominion diplomatic channel. They want to talk peace." Park let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Around the room, people began to cry, to laugh, to hug each other. Earth had survived. "Set up a meeting," Park ordered. "Neutral ground. We'll hear what they have to say." The negotiation took place aboard a small station floating between Earth and the Valon fleet. Admiral Park led the human delegation, accompanied by Dr. Hana Rim and General Kim. Commander Velthris came with 2 advisors, all of them looking uncomfortable. They sat across a table from each other. 2 species who had been at war hours ago, now trying to find peace. "Let me be clear," Velthris began. "You did not defeat us militarily. In a direct battle, we would have destroyed your forces completely." "We know," Park said simply. Velthris seemed surprised by the admission. "Then you understand. This is not a surrender. This is a practical decision." "A decision to leave us alone," Hana added. "Which is all we wanted from the beginning." Velthris looked at the young human doctor. "You made conquest inefficient. You made it costly. Not in lives or ships, but in time, resources, and predictability. The Dominion runs on efficiency. You introduced chaos. We call it creativity, Hana replied with a slight smile. The negotiations took 3 days. The terms were surprisingly generous. Earth would remain independent, with full sovereignty over the Sol system. In exchange, humanity agreed to peaceful relations with the Dominion and would not expand militarily beyond their home system for 50 years. The Valon would provide limited access to some of their technology, particularly in medicine and energy production. In return, Earth would continue sharing cultural and scientific knowledge through an exchange program. Most importantly, all human prisoners would be returned immediately. Captain Day Kwan and his crew were among the first released. They arrived back on Earth to a hero's welcome, though Day felt uncomfortable with the attention. He had done what needed to be done, nothing more. He stood at the window of the hospital where he was being checked over, looking down at the city of Seoul. The city that had almost been destroyed. 12 million people who didn't know how close they had come to death. Captain Kwan? He turned to find Dr. Hana Rim standing in the doorway. Doctor, I heard you were the one who convinced the Valon officer to help us. Hana walked over to stand beside him. Kelthir, he's a good person actually, just caught up in a system he didn't fully believe in. I think this whole incident has made a lot of Valon question their dominion. Good. Maybe they'll think twice before trying to conquer someone else. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city below. Finally, Hana spoke. You know what's funny? We were completely outmatched. Their ships, their weapons, their technology, all of it was centuries beyond ours. By every logical measure, we should have lost in the first hour. But we didn't, Day said. No, we didn't. Because being outmatched isn't the same as being defeated. We had something they couldn't measure on sensors or calculate in computers. What's that? The refusal to give up. The willingness to fight dirty. The creativity to find solutions they never expected. Hana smiled. We were outmatched. But we were never outmatched in the things that actually matter. 3 months after the Valon withdrawal, a ceremony was held in Seoul. A massive monument was unveiled in the center of the city. It showed a small ship colliding with a larger one, frozen in metal and stone. The plaque at the base read simply, "They were outmatched, but never outmatched." Captain Day Kwan, Dr. Hana Rim, and engineer Gina Choi attended together. They stood among thousands of people, all of them alive because of the choices made during those desperate days. Did you ever think we'd survive? Gina asked quietly. No, Day admitted. I thought we were all going to die. But we fought anyway, Hana said. Of course we did. We're human. It's what we do. The ceremony ended with a flyover. New ships, built with a combination of human engineering and Valon technology. They weren't weapons. They were explorers, designed to travel deep into space and discover new worlds. The war had ended, but humanity's journey into the galaxy was just beginning. Admiral Sung Park gave a speech that day. He was retiring after the ceremony, his duty done. His words would be remembered for generations. We faced an enemy we could not defeat, he said to the assembled crowd. We were outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched in every technical measure. But we were never outmatched in courage, never outmatched in creativity, never outmatched in our refusal to accept defeat. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Today we remember not just those who fought, but what their fight represents. Humanity's strength has never been in our weapons or our technology. It's been in our ability to adapt, to innovate, to find solutions where none seem to exist. That's what saved us. That's what will carry us forward into the future. The crowd erupted in applause. Later that evening, Day, Hana, and Gina sat together in a quiet restaurant, away from the crowds and celebrations. They were tired. The kind of tired that comes from surviving something that should have killed you. What happens now? Gina asked. We can't expand militarily for 50 years. What do? We learn, Hana said. We grow. We prepare. In 50 years, when that treaty expires, humanity will be ready to take its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as equals. You really think other species will accept us? Gina asked. They will, Day said confidently. Word is spreading about what happened here. about how a primitive species said no to the Valon Dominion and made it stick. Other races are watching us now, some with fear, some with respect, but all of them are watching. Hana raised her glass. To being outmatched. Day and Gina raised theirs as well. But never outmatched, they said together. 20 years passed. Earth had transformed. Valon medical technology extended human lifespans. Clean energy from Valon reactors powered cities without pollution. But the greatest change was in humanity's confidence. They had faced the impossible and survived. That knowledge changed everything. Captain Day Kwan, now Admiral Kwan, stood in the command center overseeing the launch of Earth's first deep space exploration vessel. The Indomitable II, named after the ship he had sacrificed 2 decades ago. All systems green, the launch coordinator reported. The Indomitable II is ready for departure. Day watched the sleek vessel on the monitors. It wasn't a warship, though it could defend itself if needed. It was an explorer, carrying a crew of 200 humans and volunteers from a dozen other species, including one Valon engineer. Dr. Hana Rim stood beside him. She had spent the last 20 years as Earth's ambassador to the Valon Dominion and had just returned home for this launch. Kelthir is aboard, she said. He's the Valon engineer on the crew. He wanted to see what else humans could accomplish when they put their minds to it. Day smiled. The galaxy better be ready for us. I think they are, Hana replied. We've proven we're not a threat to anyone who leaves us in peace, but we've also proven we're not easy prey. That's earned us respect. Engineer Gina Choi's voice came through the speakers. She was aboard the Indomitable II as chief engineer. Command, this is Gina. We're ready to make history, again. Day activated his communicator. You have clearance, Indomitable II. Good luck out there. We don't need luck, Admiral, Gina replied. We're human. We make our own luck. The ship's engines flared to life. Brilliant blue light that could be seen from Earth's surface. Slowly, majestically, the Indomitable II began to move. It would travel for years, exploring regions of space that no human had ever seen. As the ship disappeared into the darkness, Dai and Hana stood together, watching humanity take its next step forward. Do you ever think about those 5 days? Hana asked. When it all could have ended? Every day, Day admitted, but not with fear, with pride. We were a young species then, barely off our own planet. We had no business standing up to an empire that had conquered 4,000 worlds. But we did anyway, because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten, Day said with a laugh. Hana smiled. That stubbornness might be humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. We show others that being smaller or weaker doesn't mean you have to surrender. That creativity and courage can overcome raw power. They left the command center and walked out into the night. Above them, stars filled the sky. Each one a sun, perhaps with planets, perhaps with life. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers, but humanity was ready. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced. They were ready because they had proven something fundamental about themselves. When faced with impossible odds, when outmatched in every measurable way, humans didn't give up. They adapted. They improvised. They found a way forward. Years from now, when the Indomitable II returned with its discoveries, it would carry proof that humanity belonged among the stars. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners. As friends. As the species that refused to accept defeat. The monument in Seoul still stood, its message as true as the day it was carved. They were outmatched, but never outmatched. And that truth would guide humanity as they ventured deeper into the cosmos, meeting new species, facing new challenges, always moving forward with the stubborn determination that had saved them once and would carry them to the stars. The war with the Valon was over. Humanity's real journey was just beginning, and whatever they faced in the years ahead, they would face it the only way they knew how, with courage, creativity, and the absolute refusal to quit. They had been outmatched, but they had never been outmatched in the ways that truly mattered, and they never would be.